Hey there, folks. I'm Matt Hansen.
And I'm John Johnson.
And you're listening to
Planes, Trains, and Comic Books.
The podcast where we discuss favorites we've reread, both classic and new comics we want to read, and everything else in between.
And here's the comic we picked this week.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Planes, Trains, and Comic Books. Today, we are celebrating Latino Heritage Month with a character that has just come out in theaters, actually. We probably should have planned this a little bit better, John. But you know, we're getting there, even though it's a little bit late from the movie. But we got Blue Beetle, the Jaime Reyes one.
Yes, this was the winner of our Hispanic Heritage Month poll. This was the one that was chosen out there. I think that's so. It just happens to coincide with well, I guess what is that, like a month or two behind?
Yeah, a month behind. Yeah,
but yeah. So that's which I'm actually excited that we're reading it now, because my experience with the character was only a little bit when we read Infinite Crisis and then the movie. So
yeah.
So I was happy that I actually was a little happy that this one won, although they all sounded good.
Yeah, me too. I haven't read this since it first came out, because this was like this series that was going on right as I started working at the comic book store in 2007. So it was like, I think it was on issue 6 or something when I started, and I was like, oh, new Blue Beetle, cool, let me check it out. So I did pick this up in issues when it first came out. I don't remember how long I read it. I do remember like reading it into the 20s though. Like I don't remember how many issues I bought, but I was reading it at least, like, because they would let us borrow the comics from the store so we could sell them. So I would like read it, but I don't know if I was buying it all the time, like through that. Yeah. So, but yeah, so yeah, Jaime Reyes is the third Blue Beetle. If you didn't know, there was 2 before him. Dan Garrett, who was the one from like the Golden Age, so the 50s and before. And then in the 60s, I think Steve Ditko created the Ted Cord Blue Beetle. And so that's the one that Owlman is based on from Watchmen. So if you think it's funny that like he's got a spaceship that looks like or a ship that looks like an owl that he flies around in, that's what Ted Cord is, or he's based on Ted Cord, who flies around in a beetle-shaped ship. And he's kind of like, the only difference is that Ted Cord is like Happy Batman. He's a guy who has a lot of money. He's a corporate industrialist guy, but he didn't have his parents killed. So it's like if Batman was born and his parents didn't die, and he just eventually decided to fight crime. But he had a happy childhood.
Yeah.
Is basically what it is. So, and unlike Jaime and Dan, he did not have powers. He had the scarab, but he couldn't get it to work. He just had it like as a little heirloom or whatever. And he just dressed up like a beetle, basically. But then Jaime actually got the Blue Beetle that he had as an heirloom, and it actually turned, because also Ted Cord was killed at the beginning of Final Crisis, or not Final, and the beginning of Infinite Crisis, which was one of the Crisis books that we read in our Crisis-a-thon. I don't know what we call it, but we went through all the DC Crisis books.
Or we went through our own crisis of reading all of the crises.
Exactly. And so if you want to go back into our archives, you can check out Final Crisis, or Infinite Crisis, which is the second crisis that happened. That one is where Jaime is introduced, and this book takes place after that. So at the beginning of that, in Countdown to Infinite Crisis, Ted Cord gets shot in the head and killed. That's because he's kind of like a goofball. Like I said, he's like a not serious Batman. So he finds out there's like this big government conspiracy going on where Amanda Waller has unleashed this OMAC program that's like an AI that's sentient, and it's a whole thing. I don't really want to go into all of it because, I don't even think that was all part of Infinite Crisis. That was just in the background going on. And so there was a satellite that was part of that, the OMAC satellite, and Jaime was, he gets his Blue Beetle suit, and he immediately fights because the Justice League asks him to fight. I think Booster Gold is the one who asks him to fight. And so this takes place after that. And they just kind of throw you in, and then they like, yeah, we'll figure it out. In this series.
DC does that. They don't really, like you said before, DC doesn't really hold your hand. They're like, yeah, they're reading everything, so here we go.
Yeah, I don't even know if they care if you read everything, but it's just like you'll get it eventually. You know, if you like the character, you'll read more, right? And honestly, that's how I like to do it now. Like after reading a lot of DC, the more I learn, the more I read, I'm like, oh, that clicks into this little piece that I read 10 years ago, and then like it all just starts making sense after a while. But almost every DC book that you start to read is going to feel like that. Like, did I miss something? You're like, yeah, you did, but don't worry about it. You're fine. You'll pick it up later. So, but this is written by Keith Giffen and John Rogers, and the art is by Cully Hamner. And I will say that Keith Giffen is one of my favorite writers of the Ted Kord Blue Beetle, and he because he wrote him in the Justice League International series. That was the 80s Justice League book. And that series is called the Bwahaha. It's known as the Bwahaha era of Justice League because it was made up of not Superman, not Wonder Woman. It was all like C and D list characters. I think Batman was in it sometimes, but like it's a lot of joking, even though there are serious moments in it, but it is generally considered the like jokey C-list level Justice League book. And that was very different from previous Justice League books, which were all about Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. It's very serious. The world is dying, all that kind of stuff. So after like the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths, where like people died and universes were collapsed and all this stuff, it was like, we need to lighten the tone a bit. So let's like throw in, some of these new characters like Blue Beetle and Booster Gold, and we're going to have Guy Gardner be the Green Lantern instead of Hal Jordan. So like, or John Stewart even. So it created like a nice dynamic between a lot of different types of characters that never really they never fit together well in the team as a team necessarily. It was all about them learning how to deal with those personalities. And I think all the readers also had to learn to deal with those personalities as well, which was kind of fun. So that's where we're coming at this. Keith Giffen is the guy that wrote that series. And so he has a good handle on the old Blue Beetle and also like how to write a Justice League kind of thing. And so he interjects a lot of humor into this character, I think. But like John said, we start off on the first issue just thrown into this thing. Literally, Jaime is falling from space and he lands in the middle of the desert. He's got his Blue Beetle costume, and this was the first time he was ever Blue Beetle. It was like that one fight with the satellite, and he comes back. He lands on Earth, or he crashes into Earth, and immediately Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, is like, who the hell are you? What are you? Like, I guess he missed the memo that this was the new Blue Beetle. And because I don't remember exactly what happened. Like I said, that part is kind of murky. I remember we read Infinite Crisis, but the whole like satellite thing I think happened in another little mini event with some of the other side characters. So,
yeah, and I have to assume that whatever Green Lanterns were there, what Guy Gardner was not. He was probably stayed behind to help Earth. It was probably Hal Jordan, I assume.
Yeah, for sure. So Guy Gardner runs into him. And if you don't know Guy Gardner, he's kind of like an asshole hothead. He's like the high school bully version of Hal. Hal is the guy that's like the cool quarterback who like is nice to the geeks, and they're like, hey man, don't pick on this guy. He's cool. But like, you're never really going to hang out with him if you're a geek, but he's nice to you. So that's cool. You feel special when he like says hi or whatever. Guy Gardner is the other guy on the football team that is like, get out of my way, loser. But he's also just as good at football and like, has the same kind of willpower and everything as Hal Jordan. So he's that guy. He's the jock asshole. But he like once he realizes like he immediately starts firing because like I said, he's a hothead. His ring powers at Blue Beetle, and Jaime is like, wait, I don't know what's going on, and his like suit is just reacting to Guy Gardner fighting him. And like right in the middle of this battle as it's going, we cut to the past. Where it just says earlier. We don't know how much earlier, but it's like Jaime, it's before he gets the suit. It's him and his friend Paco and his other friend
Brenda.
So Brenda, they made it. She's white, right?
I think so. I mean,
okay. Or half. They mentioned that she might be half. I think one time, like she's either mixed or she's just white, and so like they have like a fun like back and forth. Brenda's kind of always hard on Paco. There's no romance thing that I could tell between her and Jaime, but it seems like they're good friends though. So, and they're just kind of like walking, razzing on each other as you do when you're. I don't know how old they are. Did they say they're like 14 or something?
No, I don't really catch an age.
They're in high school.
In high school, yeah,
high
school teenagers.
Yeah. So, Paco and Brenda are kind of like arguing, and he tries to like. He says something to her that really pisses her off, and she like grabs his arm, and I guess she knows Aikido, so she like flips him onto his back, and when she does that, it uncovers this blue scarab beetle that's on the ground, like underneath this dirt, and Jaime's like, "Huh, what's that?" So I'm pretty sure that this is something that is brought up in that series, the like because I know he just shows up randomly in Infinite Crisis in issue 3. They don't show this like how this was found, but I can't. They must show in that like the beetle, something happening to the beetle. They can't just show like how they don't explain how it got here. It's just in a lot of dirt
in the ground. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm assuming somewhere in the past year or two they've set this up, and it doesn't really matter, but it's just for continuity's sake. Like in my head, I'm like, there's got to be somewhere they like in the issue that Ted Cord died, he like drops it out of a window or something and it falls, and then they just leave it holding there, and they like show one panel of it just falling into the dirt and then someone covering it or something, and then like now it's getting found, right? So like, if you didn't read that one issue, fuck you, you didn't catch it, all right? That's that's how DC is. So I'm assuming that's how it was. But either way, he finds the scarab. It just looks like a cool blue rock in the shape of a beetle. So he's like, oh, cool. That's awesome. So he picks it up. Then we cut back to the fight with Guy Gardner. And Guy Gardner gets hit by like the rebound, I guess, of his ring on the shield that the Blue Beetle suit, made instinctively to protect Jaime. And then, so like while Guy Gardner's recovering, Jaime's suit then shoots him with a ray that really pisses Guy Gardner off, and then Blue Beetle grows some wings and he tries to fly off, but Guy Gardner just grabs him, and then he right when he's about to punch Jaime, we cut back to the past again, and we see Jaime's home life. He's got a little sister, he's got a mom who's like a nurse. She works all hours of the day doing that, and then he's got a dad who's like a mechanic, and the dad is like super hardworking. Jaime offers many times to try to like pick up a shift, help his dad out at the shop, but the dad is like, no, you're going to school, you got to focus on that. Unless you've already done your homework and stuff, then maybe you could join in, but if you haven't, which he hadn't, then like, go home and do that. You got to be better than me. So there's that air of like father who's providing, but like, has to work extra hard. Both of his parents, in fact, have to work extra hard just to support them. And then the dad is like really, really wanting him to have an education and be better than him. Yeah. That's like the feel I got, at least. And then we cut back to the battle in the future with Guy Gardner and Jaime. And Guy Gardner makes a construct that looks like a drill or something. And he smashes it into Blue Beetle, and Blue Beetle crashes into the ground. And I guess because it hurts really bad, Jaime begins to cry, and he's able to reveal his face. And he says, like, please, it hurts. Like, I'm not your enemy. And then, like, Guy Gardner realizes, oh, this is like a kid in this suit.
Yeah, it's a kid.
Yeah.
He's like, wait a minute. He's a kid. I don't hurt kids.
I don't hurt kids. So, yeah, like when I said Guy Gardner was a bully, that's what he was in high school. Now that he's older, he's not really like a bully like that. he got a code of morals and ethics. You know, he's a Green Lantern, right? He's a hero, but like that's his like general feel. So when he realizes it's a kid, he's like, oh shit, like I don't beat up little kids. Like the hell. So he says like, oh yeah, Booster did tell me there was like a new Blue Beetle. Oh well, like sorry, basically. Like
My bad.
yeah, see ya. And so like he says he'll be back, you know, but like sorry about that. And like but he still doesn't trust him. Like he's like, something's weird with your suit. Because also like the other Blue Beetle he knew didn't have an alien suit or whatever, you know. So that's like he's still not trusting of it. And also he could feel like weird power coming from it that was opposing his ring. So that's different, right? And then we see the suit, like, as of right now, I think the suit has just been the suit on him. And like in the movie, if you saw the movie, the beetle itself does fuse to his spine eventually. So this is that scene. Because before this, I guess it just was like on him and it like covered him in the suit the first time. I guess maybe it was trying Jaime out. Like, let's see if this kid is good for a host. Now that it's fought the Green Lantern and everything, it's like, he's a good host. So it like shrinks down into the beetle again, gets on his back, cuts into his spine, fuses, and now it's part of his body. And like leaves him naked in the desert. And he's like, ah, shit. So then we cut back to the past where we see Jaime. He's in his room at night. He sees he's walking around. He steps on the beetle rock and he's like, huh, I forgot about this thing, you know? And then that night it kind of activates as he's sleeping and it gives him some weird dreams. And all of a sudden he can like read some kind of language that's like projected on his skin. He's like, what the hell? So like the beetle, unlike in the movie, because in the movie they made it like Jarvis from Iron Man, where it's talking to him and we can hear it and everything. In this, you can't understand what the beetle's saying to him. It's in beetle language, whatever alien language that is. So he's like answering it and stuff, but we can't understand what it's saying. But he's thinking like, man, that was a weird fucking dream, you know? So when he wakes up in the morning, he's like, yeah, so like there was writing all over my arms and stuff when I was sleeping last night. And his friends are like, was it Klingon? It was probably Klingon. You were dreaming about Star Trek. And he's like, no, I don't know Klingon. So that doesn't make sense. So they don't really believe him, or maybe they believe him, but they don't know what it means or anything. So as they're walking, they pass by this girl. And also I should say this takes place in El Paso, which is also different than the movie. I don't know why they changed it to whatever fake city it is in the movie, but it's not El Paso.
Yeah.
I think that to me that like took away from the groundedness of the character a little bit in the movie. But
very much so. The movie kind of made it seem like more like LA.
Yeah.
There was like an area of the city that was a little more urban, but then there was like a really like hopping, like super technical middle of the city or whatever. And this is El Paso, which is, you know,
not that.
No, not at all.
It's a border town. It's like right on the Mexican border. There's a lot of, at least at this time, the way they're portraying it has a lot of gangs and issues with drugs and things. So he passes by this girl and she looks kind of like a chola or whatever, you know, and she's got lots of tattoos and stuff. And he starts talking to her and she says something to him first where she just says, one of us, you know, doesn't know it yet, but definitely one of us. And he's like, huh? What'd you say? And she starts talking to him. It's like she can almost feel that he is superpowered in some way, but he doesn't even know he's superpowered yet because he doesn't even know that the beetle is superpowered. He just had a weird dream. That's all that he's done so far. So he's talking to her. And then this was one thing I wasn't sure about. I guess his friends can see her, right? Because they're like, he's talking to a girl and Brenda keeps trying to like interrupt him. And Paco's like, stop cock blocking him, basically. Like this girl's talking to him, let him talk to the lady. And so they see her, but then she like lowers her glasses and she doesn't have any eyes. And then later on, this group of people that she's a part of, they can like make themselves invisible to people. So like she just disappears.
I think the one guy has that power. He says he can like give it, he calls it his
Right.
mojo, that he can like pass it on to people, because like they see him like the next day, and they're at school, and uh Jaime sees them through the fence, and he's like, hey, do you see that gal's over there again? And his friends look, and they're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
And
there's no
that's
girl
because,
over there.
yeah, there's nobody over there. What are you seeing things?
Yeah, so the other guy that's in her group can like make them invisible to people. Um, so yeah, then we cut to the past again, and we see Jaime is walking. I'm sorry, we cut to the future again, and Jaime is walking in the desert naked, and he's got to walk to El Paso, and that's the end of the first issue. Just him walking in the desert naked, which is always a fun thing to do. And then he does eventually make it all the way to El Paso. Then we cut back to earlier, and this is where you were talking about where he's at lunch with his friends the day he had that dream. The first night he had the Blue Beetle in his room, and he sees that girl on the side of the fence, like on the outside of school, and she's with another guy, and she's keeping them invisible, or he's keeping them invisible. And we don't know what happens, but she tries to like read his mind or something, and she's like, oh, he's blocking me. And then all of a sudden she has like a seizure, and blood starts coming out of her nose, and she like falls down and collapses. And then the guy's like, what'd you do to her? And just like with Guy Gardner, Jaime's like, I didn't do anything. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, what the hell? I'm not doing anything. But even in this, he's even less knowledgeable because he hasn't turned into Blue Beetle yet for the first time. So I guess it's probably like the Beetle has chosen him and marked him. They're feeling that he's got some kind of superpowers, and when they tried to probe it, it probed back. We'll say the Beetle was like, "Fuck you! You're not going to find out who I am."
It probed back harder.
Yes, exactly. So now that gang of kids or whatever that has powers is after him, and they're like, "What'd you do? You hurt one of ours. We're going to hurt one of you guys." So
yeah.
Then we cut to the present again, where Jaime's walking naked. He finds a gas station, and he finds a Goodwill drop box. And just as he's about to pull some clothes out, some guy, I don't know who it is, but it's Texas, so who knows? It could have been anybody. Comes up with a shotgun and is like, what are you doing? Because he thinks he's like an illegal or a coyote is what he actually thinks at first. And he's like, oh, wait, you're not a coyote, you're a kid. And then the guy's like, oh, I thought this guy was going to be bad. I don't know about you, but
yeah, I thought he was going to be, like a racist or
at least racist. I thought maybe he was going to be like a pedophile or something because he's like, oh, like, yeah, just take some clothes out of there. It's fine. And like, you habla inglés? And Jaime's like, yeah, I live here. I got beat up and left in the desert naked or whatever. He's like, oh, okay, no problem. Why don't you take a ride in my truck? And I'm like, don't go in the truck with him, Jaime. That's a bad idea. So yeah, like surprisingly, that guy does not end up being bad. He actually
he's just a friendly stranger.
Yeah, as there are in Texas, lots of friendly strangers. As long as you got your gun on you, you're good to go.
it's the South. We're known for our Southern hospitality.
Yeah. And racism. Anyway.
And racism.
So then we cut back to the past, and we're seeing later that day after school, where Jaime's at, talking to his dad again at the shop, and he's like, come on, Dad. You've worked like 3 shifts in a row. This other guy, Lewis, that works here, he's never showing up. You could just fire him, and I could take his spot, and I could work for you instead, or with you instead. And the dad's like, no, he's just sick. It's fine. So as he's talking to his dad, he sees that gang from earlier, the guy from earlier who was at the fence, and he's like powering up, and he's got 3 other people with him. And it's like, oh, crap. So Jaime doesn't want anybody to hurt his dad or his dad to notice. But like I said, this is like a gang area, or at least, the city has gangs, right? So he's worried. He doesn't know who these guys are. He's just assuming there's some kind of gang and he's going to hurt their dad. Or hurt his dad. So he runs out and he's like, what do you guys want? And immediately kind of like runs into an alley, and they begin attacking him. They're trying to find out like what he is and what he did to their friend earlier.
Yeah.
And so like there's the guy that can do the invisibility thing. Then there's a woman or a girl who's like, I'm assuming she can like seduce you really good because she
Yeah,
tries that on Jaime.
it's like power of persuasion or
Yeah,
something.
suggestion, persuasion, something like that. Then there's like a guy who's like really short. He's got like a Wolverine's body, but he's like, or like Puck from X-Men or Alpha Flight or whatever. And he's very short and stocky, but he's super strong and like beast. He can like jump around. He's got moves. And then there's like a really big guy whose sweat is apparently acidic, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure if I was picking up on that. It could have been a
No,
smell. It could have been, but I'm
no. It's sweat because when he wipes and then like he like throws it at him. They're like, "Hey, watch it. We gotta keep him alive." And he's like, "Oh no, it didn't touch skin. It was just his clothes." So
okay. Yeah. You see little scorch marks, but I thought the way that it's drawn, it's green smoke. So I thought it was like stinkiness or is it actual like acid or whatever? So
I don't know, but I like that they so like this is we find out this group is called the Posse,
mhm.
and they're like you said, yeah, like we think it's just a gang, but it's actually like a group of, I guess, metahumans, basically, right?
Yeah,
Like
super powered kids.
Yeah, just in Southeast Tech or Southwest Texas, and they're all they all have like a little special ability, but they're all kind of like high school kids, basically,
Yeah.
around that age at least.
So since they're trying to like just take him in and see what his powers are, and like maybe he can help the girl from earlier, the first person who tries to really do anything is her name's Bonita, but she's the suggestion girl, and she does her suggestion thing. Jaime goes in for a kiss, or she goes in a kiss on Jaime, and then he grabs her wrist almost instinctively, like the Blue Beetle suit is doing it. And this is the first time he transforms. So he immediately, instantly transforms into Blue Beetle, and he doesn't know what the hell's going on. And like the suit is yelling out in the alien language, and like, it's like probably like, stop, do not move, like, but no one knows what it's saying because it's an alien language. And so they of course all attack him, and he attacks back, and there's a big scuffle with these guys, but he pretty much takes him on. Pretty handedly. They didn't know who they were messing with. He's able to jump away eventually and fly off. But the problem is those kids, when the girl from earlier at the school was inside of his head for a second, she found out his address, like his home address, and that's how they knew where to find his dad. At the job, so they have information on him. So that's kind of scary. So he does go back home, and the weird thing is, like, it makes it seem like the suit is disgusting. He's like vomiting after every time he transforms.
Yeah.
So like the first time he transforms, he transforms back and he's naked because he doesn't have any clothes on under this thing after it goes on. And then he's also vomiting this blue liquid, and he's like, I don't know what's going on. Like, and then also like he says something like, pregnant. She was pregnant. How did I know? And I'm like, wait, are they talking about Brenda? Bonita. Bonita. I think that's who he was talking about, but I don't know. They're like setting up. They're dropping little hints of stuff.
I wasn't sure on that. That was weird.
Yeah, it was like the suit could tell. I think Bonita was pregnant, but they didn't say. They didn't specify further on that yet. But he has to sneak back into his house because it's nighttime and he hadn't come home from school yet. And he knew his parents were going to worry. And when he gets home, his parents were worrying. But the dad was like, oh, I'm sure he's in bed. Or the mom was worrying, I should say. But the dad came home and was like, I'm sure he's in bed. You just didn't see him because you were busy. And then he peeks his head in right as Jaime gets in bed and pretends he's sleeping. And the dad's like, see, he's here. No problem. So everybody missed that he was Blue Beetle the first day at least. So then we cut to present. And the whole time Jaime has been running through the desert naked, and then now he got the ride from the trucker guy. He was saying like, man, I bet like my little sister already moved into my room or whatever, kind of as a joke. So he goes to sneak into his room once he gets dropped off by that guy, and he goes in, and it's like Back to the Future 2 when he like sneaks into his house and there's like there is a person in his bed, and this is like that but it's with his sister, and he's like, oh my god, you did move in fast, like what the hell? And then it turns out, big shock, his parents run in with a bat because they think someone's breaking in, And then we see his dad is all skinny and he's got a cane. And it turns out that he's been missing for not a day like he thought, but a whole year.
A whole year.
Yeah. So like he was in space. He lost time. Something happened. We don't know. But everybody, he left for that day to fight, once he got called by Booster Gold to fight this satellite. And then when he came back, it's been a year. And so people thought that he just ran away. His parents, of course, were like super freaked out about it. They thought he either ran away or hoping that he ran away at least so he wasn't dead, because that's what you assume, right? When you're a parent, like your kid's dead somewhere. So, then so now everybody knows it's been a year, right? He knows it's a year. They know he's back. And we also see, like, we get little hints that Peacemaker is on the trail of him or something, or on the trail of something in this town. And I didn't know Peacemaker was in this. And it's not the Peacemaker you know from the show either. It's like a hard-hitting Peacemaker. What'd you think of this Peacemaker, John?
No, he's like tatted. He's like tatted up, and it was funny because when like there's a page turned for us, and like the cover of it is like the guy in like silhouette on a motorcycle going towards Blue Beetle, and he's got this circle on the back of his on his back that has has like a star looking in it. I thought right away, and I was like, is that Captain America? And I was like, wait a minute, this is DC, not Marvel. So I was like, what's going on? Yeah, and then it's come to find out, I guess he's Peacemaker, but he is the Peacemaker at this current time and not the Peacemaker we know. And like you said, he's like a hard tattooed.
There's no funniness in it. He's not a joke in this. It is
no.
It is he goes to a gas station and there happens to be a robbery in progress, and he's like, when we cut to him inside, the one of the guys is already down on the ground because he shot him, and then the other guy has the main dude as a hostage, and he just walks up with a beer or whatever, and he's like, how much for this, to the guy that's a hostage, and the guy's like, are you kidding me? Like, what are you gonna do? And then he like grabs the gun from the dude and he smacks the bad guy, and that guy falls down knocked out, and he's like, all right, like, keep the change. Like, he just throws some money on the thing and walks out. So Peacemaker's here for some reason. We don't really know why, but we pick up the next morning, I guess, with Jaime trying to explain to his family what happened. And of course it sounds crazy. A beetle took over my body. I fought in space. I crash landed last night and came back. And of course his mom is like, are you fucking serious? You're on drugs. You're on drugs, So like, makes sense, right? But he's like, no, I promise. Look, I can prove it. And then he transforms into Blue Beetle in front of them, and they're like, oh my God, like, that's crazy. So his mom doesn't really know how to take it. His sister doesn't know how to take it. They run out of the house, and the dad has to explain to him, like, look, she thought you were dead, basically, like she had come to terms with, like, you left, but like in her head, you were like her perfect little son. And now that's kind of turned on its head. It wasn't that you ran away or that you were kidnapped or that you were hurt. It was like you were in the sky fighting, and then, no one knew what the hell happened to you. So also no one's telling him what happened to his dad, because his dad went from like an able-bodied kind of like bigger guy to a skinny guy with crutches, and no one's saying like, hey, or canes, and no one's saying like, hey, this happened to your dad. So no one will tell him that. So finally, now we're all in the present. We're not cutting back and forth between the past and the present. So now Jaime is like, okay, first thing I want to do is find my friends. So his suit has like a tracking system, and it helps him find his friends. But also, like, he finds out that, oh, the beetle can actually make clothes for me. That would have been useful to know before,
Yeah.
So, like on the rooftop where he's searching for his friends, it makes the clothes for him. He's like, okay, great, thanks. And then he goes to one of his friends' houses. I think it's Brenda's house, and she is not there. It's for sale. And he's like, what the hell? Then he goes to school, and it turns out Paco's not there. but the suit tells him Paco is in Mexico, like on the border. And so he tracks down Paco, and it turns out Paco's hanging out in the gang of people, of those kids from earlier that, tried to fight him. And he's walking with the guy that can make people invisible at the border. So, or Paco is. So Paco's walking with the invisible making guy, and they're just walking through because, they're invisible. But there's some kind of like Men in Black agency out for him, or out for them. And so they see them, like they have gadgets that show like where this invisible guy is. So they immediately start attacking this area, and then Jaime sees this and he jumps in and saves them. And the guy who can turn everything invisible, do you know what his name is? I don't want to keep calling him the guy. But...
Yeah, he is. Is it? Let's see. It's Probe, Yurt, Duncan, Roulette, or Route. No, I guess I did not get him.
I'm gonna call him Invisible Guy, right? So let's say, so Invisible Guy is saved by Jaime, and he's like, "Wait, that's the guy from last year who hurt Bonita and everybody else, and our other friend." And so, but Paco's like, I don't know. This was the only thing I was like, how does Paco know that's him? But like immediately after this fight is over between the Men in Black people, Paco's like, dude, it's you. And I guess he hears his voice. That's the only thing I think is, Jaime's telling the border agents like, hey, I'm not going to hurt you. Stop pointing guns at us. And then he just jumps away with them, or with Paco. And the invisible guy, I guess, just goes invisible, or he's just left there. And the government agents surprisingly get arrested. I don't know. I guess they didn't know that they were government agents. But, or I don't know if they're government. They might be like Amanda Waller's like crew, so no one knows that they're agents or something.
Yeah, I guess they work for some other character that we.
Right, but they're all like high tech and they're in black suits or whatever. So it's
I thought it was the Men in Black crossover at first too.
Right. It could have been with this alien tech suit or whatever. So, but yeah. So immediately Paco's like, "Oh my God, Jaime, you're alive," and then Jaime has to transform in front of him and be like, "Yes, it's me. I'm Blue Beetle," and everybody thinks it's disgusting when he transforms, which is kind of funny. The funny thing is like it doesn't look particularly gross or anything in the art. But like everybody is about to puke every time he transforms. So, but Paco's very happy to see him immediately. And he's like, "Oh my God, you got to see Brenda." And he tells Jaime what happened. He says, Brenda went home after you left and her dad beat the fuck out of her. And then he went to jail, right? So he's in jail right now. And now she lives with her aunt. In a nice house. So Paco brings Jaime to Brenda's house, reintroduces them. She's all, of course, very happy. And this is where, like, I didn't seem like they have any kind of romance going, which is kind of good, like, or like different from some of the teen superheroes. And then the fourth issue starts, and we get Jaime is now searching or doing some research on the Blue Beetles. Now that he knows what he is and he's had time to sit down, he goes on the computer. He looks up Dan Garrett, the first one, and he's like, "Oh, Dan Garrett had powers, but didn't have the Beetle suit. He just had some certain powers." And then Ted Cord just had a suit, no powers.
Yeah, but you couldn't open the Beetle.
Yeah.
Scarab. So
as he's researching this, all of a sudden, a face appears on his computer and is like, "Welcome to the club, Jamie," or Jaime. And then, Jamie, Jaime. Yeah, it's spelled Jamie. I just read it like that. But yeah, Jaime. And then he's like, "What the hell?" And it turns out it's Oracle. Maybe she called him Jamie because she's white. But if you didn't know, Oracle is Barbara Gordon.
She's the lady in the chair.
Yeah. So after Killing Joke, when Barbara Gordon was shot by the Joker, and
Yes, and I did. I
paralyzed.
was going to say, and I did not mean that because she's paralyzed. I just meant
Yes, you did,
that
John. You said it.
that is not what I meant. I meant because she's the one who's on, on getting the background on things, giving everybody in their earpiece like the information they need.
Yeah.
She's the
She's the
guy
lady in
in
the chair.
She's the lady in the chair. I did. I realized as soon as I said it, I realized, oh God, that's so
Yeah.
and
So if you didn't know, Barbara Gordon was shot by the Joker in Alan Moore's Killing Joke. That paralyzed her, and then even though that wasn't supposed to be in continuity, they were like, no, we're going to make that continuity. And then she became, I think, the first paralyzed superhero, because after she was Batgirl, and then she becomes Oracle, who's like you said, the eyes and ears of these heroes all at once. They do a lot of she does a lot of background stuff to help the heroes as they work, and they all have like an earpiece that she can like hack into and stuff. So she hacks into his computer and is like, hey, I'm going to send like an operative your way. And he doesn't know who she is. But she's like, no, it's like the birds of prey. And then she's like, oh, what? You guys got like bird powers? And she's like, no. And they're like, and he's like, so is it like a bunch of birds? And she's like, no. And it's like, do they have bird code names at least? And she's like, well, one of them does. And she's talking about Black Canary. And so if I was Jaime, I wouldn't mind Black Canary showing up in my house, if you know what I mean. But yeah, so she's saying like, oh, I'm gonna help you, send someone your way to help you like become a hero now, like part of the gang. You're gonna become like a card carrying member of the Justice League Unlimited, at least. I don't know about the main Justice League, but you'll be on the roster. When we need everybody, we'll call you. Basically,
we'll put you in the Rolodex. Exactly.
So, then we cut to the hospital because he's been, now that his mom knows he's back, and now she kind of believes his story. She's like, we need a doctor to check up on you, make sure this beetle isn't doing something to your body. So they go to the doctor's office. They take X-rays. Everything's fine. The only thing they don't have is the blood work, which we don't know about yet. But everything looks fine. Everything checks out. He does not see a giant beetle fused to his spine. So that's good. I don't know. Maybe it can protect itself from X-rays or something. But so as they're riding, we see Peacemaker as they're driving afterwards, they're talking, and we see Peacemaker drive by them and then see them and then turn around, and he's like, blue. And I don't know how he knows or anything. We don't know what the fuck this is. This is just like a side plot going on. And then it turns out, or we cut to Brenda's house that night, and we see, she's at her aunt's house. She's like, oh, hi, Brenda. Hi, aunt. And then Brenda's aunt is like, oh, hey, Brenda. And then she goes back in her room, Brenda's aunt does, and it turns out she's talking to some guy named the Diviner, and he's a bad guy because he's got a finger ring.
Yeah.
All right.
And like the whole, like, from his finger to like the middle to his palm, like those little like cuffs.
The finger ring, the whole ring, like it's a whole thing. Yeah. And yeah, it's not just like a ring on his finger; it's a entire finger. It looks like medieval armor for your finger, basically. It's
but just on a finger too.
Yeah, and so he's cool because of that, I guess. And so it turns out that the aunt seems to be into some shady shit, and this is why I think she's half too, because the aunt looks Hispanic. So like, if the aunt's Hispanic, maybe because they briefly mentioned something about her being, like, I think Paco makes fun of her for being mixed or something.
Yeah, and I think that the aunt is the one that they're working for. I think
she's the La Dama or whatever they call it. They keep saying like the La Dama gave us this hardware or whatever to fight people. So she must be. She seems she's like the evil person in the background. Although we don't know fully because it never really gets that far in this story arc. So then I thought this was like, I laughed out loud at this. This was like a funny part. So Jaime goes back to school. It's his first day back after the year of missing. And Paco's like, dude, you're like the most popular kid in school. And he's like, what? How? And he's like, because you're the 1 year later kid, man. Like, you totally bounced that coma kid out of the rankings. And then they passed by this kid who had been in the coma. And it turns out he was only in a coma for 3 months and nothing happened or anything. And so we see him trying to impress the girls, but now they're looking at Jaime, and he's like, no, my coma, like I traveled back in time to 1973 and I was a cop. Like he's just making shit up now because he's trying to sound cool to get that popularity back, that sweet coma popularity. But I thought that was hilarious. It made me laugh out loud. But yeah, it's funny like how that can make you infamous in a high school, right? But so they go to school, then school's over, and we see that guy that was talking to the aunt, the diviner, is kind of following Jaime, and he's like, oh, like he immediately knows. I guess he's magical, so he picks up on Jaime has something different or magical about him, and then he's like, oh, I need to test him to make sure like this is like the right guy, or we can use him. I think the whole thing was like, make sure you can, once you find him, make sure he is strong enough for what we're wanting, and we don't know what that is or anything, but so. What he does is Jaime and his friends go to the park that they used to hang out at, and then the diviner takes the trees in that park and like possesses them and says like the one named Jaime is hurting you trees, and like you Ents rise up and attack, and he like does a spell that makes the trees come alive and begin to attack Jaime, and he like it starts to attack him, and I thought this was funny too. He's like, all right, suit, anytime now. Like as he's getting the shit beat out of him by these roots. And the suit's like, and we don't hear what the suit says, but it says something. And he's like, what? You don't damage nature. What do you mean? Like nature's about to hit me. So apparently the suit doesn't want to hurt the trees. But luckily Jaime's able to like force it to take over. And he makes it fight him back. And so he sees like, oh, this spell is coming from this area. He can see the magic lines on the ground and stuff. So he does something. He like shoots the trees basically he shoots power into the ground, and it like burns all the trees. And so the weird thing about this was like, the diviner sees this and he's like, all this fuss for nothing. The La Dama will not be pleased. And so I don't know if he just thinks like, oh, he's not that powerful if these trees could take him on or something, or like give him a hassle. But he doesn't seem like he passed the test. I don't know if you felt different about that. But.
No. It definitely. It seemed like he seemed like he was like watching. He's like, oh, this guy's not a hot shot.
Yeah, he's just some stupid kid with powers and doesn't know how to control them or something. So yeah, like that's pretty much it. That's the end of the first arc is him like with his friends trying to like figure out his powers, and there's all these like weird different groups trying to either get even with Jaime or take him over. Like they're after him in some way. We got Peacemaker, we got La Dama, and we got the kids, the posse, and they're all after him. So yeah, that is where we leave it off. So what would you give it, John, and what did you think?
I liked it. Like you said, there was a lot of funny things in this, and I found that guy's name. I had it down. It was Damper.
Oh, Damper. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
He dampens everything.
It was Bonita, Damper. There was Probe is the one that could probe your mind. And
yeah, the one that had the seizure at when she tried to probe Jaime's mind.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, I liked it. I thought it was nice to have kids that you would see in the area be like, oh wow, some of these kids have powers too, and then they're they're forming their own little group, little gang. We don't know if they're actually doing anything bad. If
it didn't seem like they were. It seemed like they were kind of like kids who had powers that were like protecting each other, trying to find other kids with powers.
Yeah. Yeah, because they were like, oh hey, I feel like that, like you said when Probe was like, oh, he's one of us. Mm-hmm. You just don't know it yet. So yeah, it was fun, and it had heart. He could tell that Jaime really cares about his family, and it sucks that his dad is probably really sick with something now, with literally within a year just of him being gone, and I'm sure that's going to affect his life dramatically.
Yeah. They do. I forgot to mention. They do mention what happened to his dad, and it was like the guy that worked at his shop that kept showing up late and stuff, or not showing up at all. He it turns out he wasn't showing up because he got into debt with like a drug dealer or something. Then that guy showed up, the drug dealer showed up at his place of work to try to find him, and the dad tried to protect him, and he got, I don't know if he got shot. Was it that he got shot or that he got crushed by a car or something? I can't remember. Something like that. It was, he got hurt by this.
Yeah, he got hurt
drug
really
dealer.
bad.
So that's what happened, and yeah, so.
But yeah, and I like the art in it. There was one issue that had the guest artist, which sometimes it's fun, or when someone else takes over. But it was one issue, and it was right in the middle of this, and it was an adjustment, to say the least.
Yeah, it was definitely different than Hamner's art.
Yeah, and because I was enjoying the art, like it felt like, we were kind of talking about this before. It felt like a cartoon of the era, actually, like like the Spider-Man series or X-Men, stuff like that.
Well, it didn't feel like that. That was the '90s stuff.
I guess that was '90s. This would be like early. It's like Static Shock.
Yeah, Static Shock. It felt like that kind of animation.
But yeah, I enjoyed it, and I think Jaime is an interesting character, and I like I do want to know more about Blue Beetle. Like I know you're a big fan of Ted Cord Blue Beetle, so I definitely want to read more of the history, because it seems cool that like they're just building upon it. Like they're kind of combining everything with Jaime for now, as far as like he has a suit and he's able to have these powers, although the powers come from the scarabs that makes the suit. So right. I laughed out loud that moment when he's on the rooftop and he's like, you can make clothes for him. And I had that Adam Sandler that this could have been brought to my attention yesterday. Yeah. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It was fun. I actually read a little bit further, just because I felt like that was the end of the arc, but I couldn't tell. So I actually read the next two in general. That was it. It added a little bit more, but we still didn't get much about like Ladon.
Yeah, I feel like this is like before trades were fully taken off. So yeah. I feel like this is more of an actual like comic book series of old, where the issues are going to build on top of each other, and they're not going to pay off a series or like a storyline in 6 issues. It's going to be like a 12 issue thing, or like it felt like they were setting up a lot in these first 4 issues, and there's the payment for that is going to be way later, not next issue or something.
Yeah, which is kind of nice, because like you said, like a lot of times now, it's like 3 to 6 issue arcs in general, usually like somewhere in between there. Yeah. So it's nice to like have some stuff really drawn out. But yeah, overall I liked it. The writing was really good. The art was solid. I enjoyed it. I definitely would read more. And like I said, I definitely would like to know more of the history of the Blue Beetle now. So yeah, I would give it a 7, solid 7.
Okay. Yeah. I will also give this a 7. I think it was pretty strong first trade of a character. Definitely made me want to read more. I like Jaime as the new Blue Beetle. I think this is like the right way to do legacy characters too. Like, cause this was like one of the first, like, hey, we're trying to put diversity in, cause obviously everybody is like a white guy, right? So we're trying to throw in some diversity for these newer characters, and it's a good way to do it. You have one, it's not just he's the same guy, but brown skin or whatever, right? Like it's a different power set because it's the beetle itself. That's like the suit and everything. So it's different than Ted Cord. He's a young kid, so it's like, okay, we're giving some youth to this kid. It's not just some industrialist guy. He's a different flavor because he lives in El Paso, so there's not really many DC characters that live in real cities. Most of them are in fake cities like Gotham, Coast City, Hub City, so Central City. So like those aren't real cities. So the fact that it is in El Paso is kind of interesting because that's a real city in America. So that gives it a different feel. And then also the fact that Ted Cord died, and he died pretty like straightforward and like ain't coming back. And like there's no, I mean, he does come back eventually, but that was like way later. So, and yeah, I'm of the like mind of, if you kill a character, just kill him. He's dead, or they're dead, and then move on with the new character, because that's how you have better, legacies and stuff, right?
Yeah, we have so much drawn out of like multiverses and or going back in time and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, sometimes it is sometimes it really does make it more meaningful when you've had like, yeah, this classic character pass on, but then like if you have someone that takes the mantle of it, like it kind of makes it bittersweet to be like, oh, like, take on, maybe look into like what they left, if that's part of the connection.
Yeah, you could have
Yeah.
storylines that connect to that character, like kind of like the movie did, where it's like, okay, Ted Kord's sister is the bad guy or whatever, so that probably wouldn't be in the comics because that's not a character. But like you could build off of stuff that Ted Kord did that like leads into other storylines, or like maybe Jaime picks up on where Ted Kord left off when he got killed in this government conspiracy that's going on, so
Yeah.
like that kind of thing. You would have it, but now he's got powers, so like a bullet ain't gonna do anything to him, so like he could solve the mystery and get vengeance for Ted Kord. So you could do shit like that, and I think that's the way to do it. Like, I don't like it when it's like, hey, we have 5 Supermen now, and it's like, why? Like, there's too many of the same character flying around. What's different from John than Clark? It's like, well, John is young and he's gay, and it's like, okay, but like he still wears a suit and he still has the same power set, right? It's like, yes. It's like, well, then it's not really a new character, is it? Like, it might as well just be, young Superman from the 60s or whatever. So, I don't know. I don't like these legacy characters that are not really like different or anything. And then also you still have the original character. So like, why would I read the legacy character unless you make him fucking awesome? But like if Blue Beetle was around and he was a big enough character when this came out, why would I read this Blue Beetle especially if it's the same thing? Like if he's just a kid who put on a costume and was like, I'm the new Blue Beetle. And it's like, no, you're not. Like, like that's how I would feel if I was a fan of the old Blue Beetle, and that's what they did. But they didn't. They did it in a good way. I feel like this is the right way to do a legacy character. So yeah, and also, like I said, it's completely different. It's a good flair. You throw in the Mexican heritage, you throw in the friends in El Paso, and it gives it a totally different feel than a lot of other books. So it was pretty fun to read. I liked it. What were you saying?
Oh no, I was agreeing. I like that. It made it feel a lot more grounded in real world. Because like you said, they set it in an actual town that we know, not just because we live here, but in general, like most people have heard of El Paso. They get the idea of it.
Right.
And then 2, like having that, like they showed him being in his culture, in his town and whatnot, but it wasn't like all of the identity to it. Like he's also a kid. He's also connecting.
Yeah, that's not the only thing about him.
Right? Yeah. So it was nice. It was really enjoyable. In comic, and I like this better than I like the movie for sure.
There you go.
No, I mean there are things I liked about the movie too. Don't get me wrong. But
the things I liked about the movie were the allusions to Ted Kord. That's what I liked about the movie. But yeah, I mean, I could see, I hope if you like the movie, you go read this and you're like, oh, that's cool. But I thought that this was better than the movie personally. Like, and it definitely does the DC thing where it throws you in the middle of something that's already happened. So you kind of have to like, it takes you a second to pick up and start running with it. But I think it gives you enough to like just deal with it. Like, okay, you're just as confused as Jaime is. Like Jaime's like, what's going on? And you're like, what's going on? So like you're on the same page as him as he discovers his suit and the powers within. So, yeah. So I'm gonna give it a 7. You give it a 7. So this was our exclusive for this month. Oh no, I'm sorry. This wasn't our exclusive for this month. We have our exclusive next week. This was the voted on Patreon one. So if you would like to vote and pick the second podcast we do every month, you can join at patreon.com/planes, trains, and comic books. And you also get an exclusive every month if you are signed up on that as well. And for that, we are doing a manga that just came back into print. It's called Sandland. It's by the creator of Dragon Ball, Akira Toriyama. And apparently it is a 1-volume manga. So I don't know about you, John. I've never heard of a 1-volume manga. Like there's at least 2 of most of the ones I've seen have at least 2 volumes. So yeah, I'm excited.
No, I am too. And this is one of the things actually we've talked about before is like, you know, a lot of the ones that you want me to read, you're like, we can't just do like one or two. Like you got to read like 3 to 6 to get like a good chunk of the actual story.
Yeah.
You know, some of the ones we've done have either been like, you know, one-offs, bigger, you know, have a collection of them, or things like that. So yeah, I'm excited to check this out. You know, I love Dragon Ball. I like that, I like his humor.
Yeah.
So I definitely am interested in this. I like that you said it was like Mad Max, but with his humor. So it sounds like a fun way to go into that type of world. So
yeah, it's like post-apocalyptic Fury Road Mad Max style, but with Akira Toriyama's sense of humor and character design and stuff, and world building, you know. And then, like I said, it's only 1 volume, so I'm expecting it to be a pretty cool story. I can't wait to read it. So we'll read that for next week, and then we somehow messed up the order, so also next week. So we're going to release the exclusive on Friday, and then next week is the beginning of October on Sunday. So we're going to, for October 1st podcast, we're going to be reading, what was it again, John?
Well, it's our favorite time of year, at least for me. We always go hard on our October comics. We're not doing our 13 comics of Halloween.
No, that will never happen again.
It's a really good series. You should check out on our YouTube. We did 13 individual first.
Well, not only on our YouTube, we did it all. You know, it's on the back.
It's on the podcast too, but I'm just saying it's there as well.
It's available.
Yes. And anyway, but we love spooky comics. We do a lot of like horror kind of in general anyway. But you know, being October, we definitely got to be on theme. Because as Matt says, I like to have our themes on this podcast. So we are going to be doing one that has kind of been on my radar a little bit, and then Matt said he read years and years ago. It is an Elseworlds title. It is a Batman title, and it is Batman and Dracula Red Rain.
Yeah. So this is like Kelly Jones. I think he wrote it and drew it, but Kelly Jones is one of my favorite artists. Super gothic style, and it's vampire Batman, basically. So fuck yeah, that sounds awesome. I read it a long time ago. I remember liking it, but it's been at least 15 to 20 years since I read it. So, and yeah, so that's what we're going to do for the 1st of October. And then we're going to do, you know, a horror comic pick for the Patreon. And like I said, if you want the exclusive of Sandland this month, and also to vote on what we're going to pick for October, you can, and every month going forward, you can sign up on our Patreon at patreon.com/planes, trains, and comic books, all one word, and join any of the tiers, and you get to vote. And yeah, so anything else, John?
I don't think so. I'm just excited to get into some spooky times.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? We do have. Hold on, I got to look up. We got to thank our patrons.
Oh, we got to thank our patrons.
We got a new patron, so I got to look him up real quick. What was his name? We got a couple new patrons actually.
Oh, nice. Well, I'm going to thank Hoku and Otaku Mike, our 2 longest time patrons now. We've also got Christian, Matthew, and then we have Kyla. Mm-hmm.
And then now we have 3 new ones. We have Joseph, Mira, and Kevin. So thank you guys so much. They all joined on the Hellblazer tier. So hope you guys are enjoying my dive into Hellblazer. I think we're on issue 86 as of this week. So that's pretty cool. We're working our way through. We're almost a third of the way through Hellblazer. So that's pretty awesome.
Wild.
Yeah. So we just finished the Garth Ennis run. It was fantastic. So getting a lot of good feedback from them. And yeah, so having a good time over there. If that at all interests you, definitely check that out. And at patreon.com/planes, trains, and comic books. And with that, we'll see you guys on the next one.
On the next one.
Bye.